Alrighty, so week 7 in our class, if we look at the content, that means if you're up to date, should be on what, week 7 times 2, 14, right? So 14, relatively easy, one item. But at this point, a couple of you are already heading towards the end, which is awesome. And a couple things I want to say before I kind of jump into some of the additional comments I want to make after last week's chat GDP. One thing is that on the assignment list where I have the discussions, right? I use this for two reasons. And if you didn't hear me say this, I'm going to say it again just so you have it. I use it because I have to report attendance to the campus, and this is a way for me to show the students that are staying up with the content that are considered present during those weeks. And if you're doing it after, which I love that you do, meaning if you're running late and doing those, just know that those don't affect your grade, but I do put a 0 there because that's the way I show the campus the student was actually active in the class during that week. Okay? So just know that. And I'm going to repeat, it's good to watch because I've talked about some really important topics around this class. And it's good to stay up with that content as well. I just want you to know it doesn't affect your grade. Okay, so this week, I was looking through and finishing up the content myself. And, Todd has a build a website. There's not really a lot of requirements here. So you can kind of just do what you want. But, what you want to do here, and this is one of the things I'll look for, is, using the techniques of layout that we've learned, whether you're using, he showed 3 ways. He gave you 3 ways to do it, right? So you can use any, matter of fact, let's just look at it just so we can remind ourselves, right? This is relatively easy. Use bookmarks on one of the pages, drop shadows above the fold, header and footer in a Google font. Okay, so not a lot there. Again, take it further than that if you want. I definitely would. And then if you scroll down to the end, where I actually updated the final project, so then you do some transitions, you do a font awesome. And so on the last one, here's what I want you to do. I want you to showcase, right, what you've learned in this class. So you could create pages that, discuss, again, 5 pages is not a lot. You do need a menu, right? You do need, and in this case, I want you to use Flexbox because I think it's the most relevant today, some kind of color scheme. And, Todd showed you ways you can go out there and look, though, and find colors that look good together. Semantic HTML, make sure you're doing that. Include some images, like if you have your own, use those. Otherwise, make sure you're using royalty free. Use a footer, make it look nice and make sure all links are working. So what you want to do for the content here is find some concepts that you feel like you're going to walk away really understanding or that you would like to highlight. Because one of the things I would recommend you think about doing is actually setting up a profile, so not a portfolio, well, it is a profile, but it's a portfolio site to where it highlights the work that you've done. Again, this is not necessarily it. This is just the beginning of something that you could think about, like demonstrating to somebody's, I understand how to do Flexbox, right? I understand how layout works, right? I understand how to use these, the different things that we've learned, media queries. So, again, pick, this is 5 pages. So actually, in this case, it'd really be the index page, which you need, right? And then 4 subpages, right? So you have to have those linked from the main page. Kind of think about the taco shop concept that we've seen in this course. Okay, FYI. So we're at week 7, right? This is the final project you need for the end of the class. I talked about last week the end of semester date. So if you're in question, make sure you go to simple syllabus and scroll down and see that. So the thing I want to add to our discussion this week is a discussion, because last week we talked about AI. I talked about AI and I recommended you think about it. So there's actually another tool that is also available to you. I believe this is available to all students. I have to double check that. But FYI, I just want to show it to you because it's another thing I want you to just know about. And it's called Copilot. And it's built into VS Code. Okay, so I was actually, kind of going through a little video this morning. If you want to go and search YouTube for getting started with the future of coding, right? Because I'm guessing for those of you here, this is not the end of what you're going to be doing. It's somewhat the beginning. And if coding is something you see yourself doing in the future, you definitely want to understand the tools that are now at our disposal. So I just want to give you an example. So here I am in my repo, okay, in VS Code. And I just have up, right, just a simple week 9 or something like that, okay? And then what I've done is I've placed a comment into the CSS file, and you can do this with HTML, JavaScript, whatever. So what you can do here is, you might you can ask a question, or like I've just put a question in here, and when I hit enter, then once I have Pilot installed, now this is the icon for it here. Matter of fact, let me just pause real quick. Let me just pause real quick and do that. Who can get Copilot? Well, that was interesting. If you're not a student, teacher, right, or a maintainer of I'm reading this open source project, you can try it, which means for everybody else, you are a student. You may just have to prove that, right? But it gives you a quick start. I was wondering why, because I know some people have to pay for Copilot, but it is definitely worth understanding what it is. So it's, we talked about Chat GTP last week, and it can help you with coding, but it can also just answer general questions that you might have. But in addition, now you could think about Microsoft's Copilot, which is very powerful, that is specifically for code that's built into VS Code. So I just want you to know, some of the tools because these tools are going to affect you and I in the way, because the idea here is that by using these tools, we should be more productive as developers, as coders, because we can basically, in this, I like the example I was listening to earlier. If you've ever heard this term, and maybe you haven't, it's called pair programming. And pair programming is the idea that you're actually coding with somebody else, right? So you and somebody else are coding together. You're learning, they're learning, right? So you're taking the productivity of two people. And the hope would be, right? It may not always be true, but that's the kind of the hope, the outcome. But really, the point of that is actually to get better as you work with somebody else. But Copilot can be that in a sense. You can leverage Copilot, right? Your Copilot. You can think about it. So pair programming is a thing where you have two people, but now instead of another person, if you don't have that available, you could use Copilot. Okay, so I've talked about the attendance. I've talked about, right, the end project. I've talked about kind of the way it's going to flow to the end. So make sure, if you're, just catching up with this class, time is getting short, right? Here we are at week 7, right? So remember 7, 8, 9, and it's done. So hopefully you're staying up with this class. I know there's a certain segment of you that are, because I grade your work. And if you don't know this, I grade your work almost every day. I grade, which means you're getting that feedback and hopefully you're seeing it. And it seems like many of you are kind of getting in the groove and starting to get some great work done. All right, so week 8 next week, which might be my last video. We might not have to have one after that, but I'll at least need to do an attendance. All right, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.